In a tall glass building in Washington, D.C., the morning light reflected on the windows like gold. Inside that building, hundreds of people hurried around. Cameras were being set, microphones were tested, and the biggest business news networks were preparing to go live. The world's eyes were on one man, Richard Hale, a billionaire CEO known for his powerful voice and sharp mind. He was about to present something that no one had ever seen before, an ancient tablet found in Africa, believed to hold the secrets of an early civilization's wisdom. Richard's company had bought the tablet through an auction, spending millions of dollars. Historians believed the script carved into the stone was more than 3,000 years old. It could reveal how early African traders used mathematics and astronomy, long before Europe had written records. For Richard, this discovery wasn't just about history. It was about showing the world that his company could unlock the secrets of the past using modern technology. His team had spent months planning the event, and every second mattered. The large conference hall was filled with professors, scientists, government officials, and reporters. Bright lights shone down on the stage. A huge banner read, "The Language of the Ancients, Decoded by Hale Technologies." The atmosphere buzzed with excitement. Just an hour before the event, Richard stood in his dressing room, adjusting his tie. He had everything prepared: the speech, the presentation slides, the live translation from the expert they had hired from Oxford University. The translator, a well-known linguist, was the only person who could explain what the tablet said. Everything depended on him. But then chaos started. A panicked assistant burst through the door. "Sir, the translator, he collapsed in the hotel. He's been taken to the hospital." Richard froze. "What do you mean he collapsed?" "We go live in 30 minutes. They said he's not conscious, sir." "He can't make it." For the first time, Richard's voice cracked. "Find another one. Anyone who can read that language." The assistant ran off, but within minutes returned, shaking her head. "There's no one else who speaks it. It's an old tribal dialect. No one teaches it anymore." Richard's hands clenched around the edge of the table. The cameras were already being tested outside. Investors were waiting. The live broadcast couldn't be stopped. His company's image, his credibility, and his pride were on the line. He stormed out of the room, his face pale but hard. "We'll start without the translation," he muttered, trying to keep control. As the CEO walked onto the stage, cameras flashed and the audience clapped. He forced a smile and began his speech. He spoke about progress, discovery, and how technology was bridging the gap between the ancient and modern world. Then came the moment he had feared, the unveiling of the tablet. The tablet stood in a glass case covered in ancient carvings. The characters looked beautiful yet mysterious, like a song written in stone. The CEO turned toward the audience and said, "Today we will read what our ancestors wrote thousands of years ago." But then came the silence. The translator's seat was empty. Everyone looked at one another. Reporters whispered. The tension spread like smoke. "Where's the translation?" someone called out. Richard's throat tightened. He gave a nervous laugh. "Our translator had an emergency, but, we'll try to, show the symbols first." Before he could finish, an uncomfortable murmur filled the hall. The event was being streamed worldwide, and within seconds the internet began commenting. The billionaire who promised to decode the past suddenly couldn't read a single word of it. In the back corner of the room, near the janitor's station, a quiet man named Marcus was watching. He was in his 50s with calm brown eyes and a gentle face. Every day he mopped these floors, cleaned the windows, and emptied the trash after long meetings. Most people passed him without noticing him, but Marcus noticed everything. He looked at the symbols on the tablet and blinked twice. He recognized them. His heart skipped. He whispered to himself, That's not just a carving. That's the old script." Marcus had grown up in a small village in Ghana before coming to America decades ago. His grandfather used to tell him stories of their ancestors who kept records on wood and stone, written in a sacred language that only elders could speak. As a boy, Marcus had sat by candlelight, tracing the same symbols in sand while his grandfather spoke them aloud. He never thought he'd see them again, especially not in a billionaire's exhibition. On the stage, Richard's assistant tried to whisper new instructions, but the CEO's hands were shaking. The audience was growing restless. That's when Marcus quietly put down his mop. He wiped his hands on his uniform and slowly walked toward the front of the room. People stared, confused. Security guards moved in front of him, but Marcus spoke softly. "Sir," he said, looking at the CEO, "I think I can read it." The whole room fell silent. Richard stared at him. "You're the janitor, right?" "Yes, sir," Marcus said politely. "But I know this writing. My grandfather taught me." The guards exchanged doubtful looks. Reporters raised their cameras. It sounded impossible. A janitor claiming to read a dead language. Richard hesitated. He didn't know what else to do. The cameras were still rolling, the crowd was watching, and the translator wasn't coming. Desperation pushed him to take the risk. "Fine," he said, his voice tight. "Come up here." Marcus climbed the steps to the stage. He stood beside the glass case, looking calm and respectful. He gazed at the stone for a few moments, then slowly began to read. His voice was soft at first, but steady. He spoke in rhythmic tones, the language flowing from his mouth like a melody lost in time. The carvings, which had looked strange to everyone else, now sounded alive. Every symbol had meaning, every pause carried weight. The audience stared, silent. Even Richard, who had been known for his impatience, didn't interrupt. When Marcus finished the first line, he turned to the microphone and translated. "It says, 'Knowledge is the light that no shadow can hide.'" Gasps echoed through the room. Marcus continued reading line by line, translating each passage with emotion. The words spoke about wisdom, unity, and peace between nations long before borders existed. The ancient king who wrote them had believed that power was not in gold or armies, but in knowledge shared among people. The deeper Marcus went, the quieter the hall became. Some of the professors took off their glasses and wiped their eyes. Even the cameramen seemed to forget they were filming. When Marcus reached the last line, he spoke with pride. "And to those who seek wisdom for fame, let them first seek humility, for only the humble can understand truth." He stepped back. For a moment, no one spoke. Then applause burst through the hall like thunder. People stood on their feet. Reporters rushed to capture his face. Richard Hale, the billionaire who had once controlled the stage, now stood speechless beside a janitor who had become the voice of history. The CEO looked at Marcus, his expression softening for the first time. He extended his hand slowly. "You've just done what no one in this building could," he said quietly. "Thank you," Marcus smiled humbly. "My grandfather always said, 'Words from the past are never lost, only waiting for someone to remember them.'" As the applause continued, Marcus's story began spreading online. Within hours, news channels replayed the video again and again. The billionaire and the janitor, the man of power and the man of heritage, standing side by side before an ancient truth. That night, while others celebrated, Marcus quietly returned to his janitor's room. He folded his uniform neatly, whispered a prayer of thanks for his grandfather, and smiled. Somewhere far away, the old man's voice still echoed in his heart, and for the first time, Marcus felt that the world had heard it too. After the event ended, people surrounded Marcus. Reporters rushed with microphones, cameras flashed from every angle, and scholars asked him where he had learned the language. But Marcus only smiled politely and said, "From my grandfather, a man who never went to school but knew the words of our people." His calm tone and gentle presence touched everyone around him. The billionaire CEO, Richard Hale, stood near the stage, still processing what had happened. For years he had believed that intelligence was measured by degrees, titles, and achievements, but now, a quiet janitor had shown more wisdom and understanding than all the experts combined. It shook something deep inside him. When the crowd finally thinned, Richard walked toward Marcus, who was standing near the exit holding his mop again. "You should not be cleaning floors tonight," the CEO said. "You should be celebrating." Marcus gave a small laugh. "Sir, I'm happy doing my job. It's honest work. My grandfather used to say, 'No work is small when done with pride.'" Richard looked at him, amazed by his simplicity. "I want to offer you a position in my company," he said. "Something that fits your talent. Language preservation, research, maybe education. You name it." Marcus hesitated. He wasn't a man used to big offers. "That's kind, sir," he said softly. "But I didn't do it for reward. I just wanted the truth to be heard." "Still," Richard said, "the world should hear more of your truth." Over the next few days, the video of the event spread across every major news channel and social media platform. Headlines called Marcus the janitor who spoke for the ancients. People from all over the world sent messages thanking him for bringing forgotten history to life. Some even wrote that his words had inspired them to reconnect with their roots. At the same time, Richard's company experienced something unexpected. Instead of gaining fame for the technology used to scan the tablet, the company became famous because of Marcus. The focus had shifted from machines to humanity. Investors and journalists kept asking about the man who had changed everything. One morning, Richard's assistant entered his office holding a thick envelope. "Sir, these are letters from Mr. Marcus," she said. "They keep arriving every hour. Students, teachers, even historians want to talk to him." Richard smiled faintly. "Bring him to my office," he said. When Marcus walked in, he was wearing his same blue uniform. He looked shy standing on the thick carpet of the executive office. "Sir, you wanted to see me?" "Yes," Richard said, offering him a chair. "Marcus, you've become a symbol of something powerful. Humility and knowledge. I want you to help me start something meaningful. A foundation may be in your name." Marcus blinked in surprise. "In my name?" "Yes, the Marcus Heritage Foundation," Richard said. "It will fund scholarships for young African students who study ancient languages and history. You'll be the voice of it. What do you say?" For a moment, Marcus couldn't speak. He had spent his life cleaning rooms and picking up after others. He never imagined that a man like him would be offered such honor. His eyes grew moist. "Sir," he said quietly, "if this helps children who have dreams but no support, then yes, I'll do it." From that day, the foundation began. Richard personally donated millions, but he insisted that Marcus lead the vision. They began sending aid to schools across Africa, building small learning centers where children could study their culture and languages. Marcus traveled with historians to his village, where they found elders who still remembered old songs and prayers. He listened to them with the same respect he had given his grandfather. Whenever Marcus spoke at events, he never used fancy words. He spoke like he always had, clear, humble, and honest. "Our ancestors were not silent," he told the audience. "Their voices live in our hearts. All we have to do is listen." People always stood to applaud, not because of his fame, but because of the truth in his tone. Meanwhile, Richard also began to change. For years, he had built his empire on pride and competition, but working with Marcus opened his eyes. He started treating his employees differently, more humanely, more kindly. He began listening more and talking less. For the first time in years, he felt peace in his heart. One evening, Richard and Marcus sat together on the company rooftop looking at the city lights. "Do you know, Marcus," Richard said, "I spent my whole life chasing greatness. But when I met you, I realized greatness doesn't mean standing above people. It means standing with them." Marcus smiled gently. "My grandfather used to say the same thing, sir. The tallest tree isn't the one that grows alone, but the one that gives shade to others." The two men sat in silence for a while. The cool breeze carried the sounds of the city, and for once the billionaire didn't feel like he was at the top. He felt like he was home. Months passed. The foundation's work expanded to other countries. Students from small villages began sending letters to Marcus, telling him how his story had inspired them to learn their heritage languages. One letter came from a young girl in Nigeria who wrote, "I want to be like you, Uncle Marcus. I want to make my grandfather's stories live again." That letter made Marcus cry quietly that night. He framed the letter and placed it on the wall of his small apartment. Despite all the attention, Marcus never left his modest life. He still took the bus to work, greeted everyone with a smile, and helped the cleaning staff when they were short-handed. When people asked him why he didn't live like a rich man now, he always said, "Peace is my wealth. Respect is my crown." One afternoon, the company hosted a celebration to honor Marcus. The entire building was decorated, and even the mayor came. When Marcus entered, everyone stood up and clapped. On the stage, a giant screen played moments from the day he had read the tablet. After the video ended, Richard took the microphone and said, "This man taught me that knowledge is not owned by the powerful. It belongs to those who respect it." He showed the world that even the quietest person can carry the loudest truth. He then presented Marcus with a golden plaque that read, "To Marcus Adebayo, the voice of history." The crowd cheered. Marcus looked down at the plaque with tears in his eyes and whispered, "Grandfather, this is for you." After the ceremony, Marcus went back to the janitor's closet. It was small and quiet, just as it had always been. He hung the plaque on the wall beside his mop. For him, that little room was more than enough. It was where he had worked with dignity and where his journey had begun. Late that evening, when everyone had gone home, Richard came by. He found Marcus cleaning the hallway, humming softly. "Marcus," he said gently, "you still work too hard." Marcus laughed. "I like clean floors, sir." "A clean place makes a clear mind," Richard smiled. "I think you've taught me more than any school ever could." They walked together down the empty hallway, the sound of their footsteps echoing. Richard paused and said, "Do you ever think about that day? The day you stepped on that stage?" Marcus nodded. "Every day," he said. "Not because of fame or attention, but because, for the first time, people listened to the voice of those who were forgotten. That's all I ever wanted." A gentle silence filled the corridor. Outside, the city lights glowed like stars. Richard looked at the man beside him, a man who had no degree, no wealth, no title, yet carried more strength than anyone he had ever met. Months later, a documentary was made about the event. It showed Marcus's story from his village to that unforgettable day in Washington. Millions watched it. Children in schools learned about him. His name became a symbol of humility and wisdom. Still, Marcus never changed. He always said, "If people remember me, let them remember that I was a janitor who loved his work and respected his past." Years later, when he finally retired, the company threw another celebration. The CEO, older and grayer now, stood beside Marcus once again. "You changed me, my friend," Richard said with emotion in his voice. "And you changed this company forever." Marcus smiled kindly. "We changed together, sir. That's how life works." As the audience applauded, Marcus looked out over the crowd, hundreds of faces, young and old, of every color and background. He saw hope in their eyes. He saw the same light his grandfather had spoken of, the light of knowledge that no shadow could hide. He lifted his hand and said one last time, "Remember, no voice is small. Even the quietest truth can echo across time." The hall went silent, then burst into applause again. In that moment, Marcus knew his story had done what he hoped. It reminded people that greatness often hides in humble places, and wisdom often wears simple clothes.